And welcome back. We all remember the terrible aftermath of Superstorm Sandy along Long Island's South Shore. Thousands of wrecked homes ruined by the storm's historic floodwaters. Hundreds of millions of dollars in federal relief money finally made its way into affected homeowners' hands earlier this year. But residents and builders alike say it still hasn't translated into getting many of these damaged properties rebuilt to allow frustrated residents to go back home. Joining us now are John Kaiman, who heads up the recovery effort on Long Island through the state organization New York Rising, and one of the contractors not too thrilled with the pace of the rebuilding. This is Ben Jackson, owner of Ben's General Contracting of Freeport. Gentlemen, good morning to both of you. Good to have you here. And a credit to you both for both being here, because we know that there have been some differences. Ben, you've had some differences in that, hey, we need the money. We wanted to get these houses back up and running so people can get back in. And John, you've got your business to do too. You can't just give out money to everybody even though they have a damaged home. Let me ask you this, Ben. I'm going to start with you. The biggest gripe right now, 18 months after the storm, what is it?
It's still difficult to get jobs starting. The program's changing. I think it's changing for the better, but I think every time there's a change, it throws a little monkey wrench into the works, which makes things a little more difficult. It's tough. People want to get home.
Yeah. And John, so what, I guess, if I'm a homeowner and I'm sitting back and saying, like, look, what more proof do I need to give you? My house is still decimated. It's still in a state of disrepair. Why can't I get those funds? What do you tell those people?
Well, ultimately, we try to explain to people that there is a process and that we have obligations. We have to follow HUD guidelines. We have to follow New York State rules and regulations. And ultimately, we have to make sure that the money goes to the right people. It has to be the right amount. They have to be eligible to receive it. Yeah. We want to make sure that ultimately the money does get into the homeowners' hands so that they can rebuild. We ultimately have been able to put this organization together so that we now have $400 million out the door. But we do appreciate that when you're sitting outside or in a hotel room, you're still frustrated. You got to get the contractor, you got to get the resources, and you got to build. Yeah. So it's a challenge, but we need to work together. And certainly Ben and I have been having a number of discussions recently, appreciating the fact that speaking and working together is going to get us farther along this path.
Your groups, and not you both personally, but maybe you personally both have been at odds a little bit in the past months, but you've gotten together and you've kind of had a little bit of a breakthrough within these last couple of days. What is that? And what people at home listening to this, what can they see is now kind of like, okay, maybe there is a little bit of a light at the end of this tunnel?
Well, I think it's important that we, those from the government standpoint, appreciate that the people who are going to rebuild Long Island are the contractors. Yeah. And we need to work with them. And certainly I think Ben and some others in the industry have approached us in a variety of different ways, but to make sure that we heard some of the challenges that they're facing. And if we can appreciate that and ultimately make some modifications to our program, which we're willing to do and have been doing, but appreciate we can do more, we're going to get this moving faster than it presently is.
So Ben, what did you hear from John and from New York Rising that now has you thinking, okay, a little bit more positively of this process?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is John is willing to listen. I mean, I came to him and I said, listen, we have this issue, and there's numerous issues there, and John said, you know, that's something we have to look at. And I honestly believe he's seriously looking at it, and so far he's made some great changes that have been for the better.
Yeah. John, there's a $5,000 limit for demolishing badly damaged homes. How did that number, I guess, arise? And is it feasible? Have you noticed that $5,000 has been enough to do the work that's needed to be done?
You know, there's one of the problems here is we have to pick a number and then apply it to thousands of homes, and there's a lot of variations. Yeah. So what we've done is we set a number at $5,000, and we are certainly aware that there's additional costs. You have to cart it away. There might be environmental issues. So when you're going to build a new home and it's $160 per square foot to actually reconstruct that home, and people have questioned whether that's enough, and in some cases it might not be, what we've done is we've added $25,000 to the front end of the rebuilding process. And that $25,000 can be used for site conditions. It could be used for some of the issues relating to demolition. It could be used for earth movement. It could be used for pilings, for elevation. So that additional $25,000 was not part of the original program. That's something that we heard from the contractors, the homeowners, the communities, community leaders, that we needed to somehow get more money to the people, or else they're not going to rebuild. And it doesn't help us if we're just short, because if ultimately they can't afford to do it and they don't rebuild, then we're all stuck.
Ben, have you noticed that there's been a shift in attitude? Are people getting a little bit more, I guess, positive in the fact that, okay, they're a little bit closer to the finish line and getting things rebuilt? Yes and no?
Yes and no. Some people are, you know, the people who are moving forward. There are some people that are stuck because they're very leery of what's going on. There's a lot of distrust there, which I think needs to be broken. I think it's great that we're working together. That might be a start to get the trust back. I honestly believe that New York Rising wants to get people home, wants to get homes elevated. This is not about policing and attacking people. So I think if we could switch that attitude around a little bit, although, you know, people who aren't in their homes are suffering, I think if we switch that attitude a little, we can get things moving a little bit better.
Well, it sounds to me as though you're both moving in the right direction. I guess that is key here for people that are still frustrated and out of their homes. Gentlemen, thank you both for taking the time here this morning. We appreciate New York Rising's John Kaiman and contractor Ben Jackson. We do thank you for taking on this difficult debate this morning with us. We'll certainly be following the progress for you at home who are wondering, hey, what's really going to happen? We're going to stay on this case. Don't you worry. Coming up next.